With only a few months left on his parole, Dylan Forrester receives a birthday greeting in the mail one day from his brother Sean. Along with his wishes, Sean looks forward to seeing Dylan at their home at Guardian Island once his past is put behind him. With time, Dylan receives another card from Sean for Thanksgiving, this time hoping for his help with renovations. By the next month, though, Dylan receives the news of the sudden passing of his little brother. Just then, he sees an armed man in his apartment, and a while later, the SWAT team descends, led by Special Agent Shaughnessy. While Dylan seems to be missing, she finds the armed man from earlier thoroughly beaten up. She also finds Dylan's antipsychotic and depression tablets prescribed by Dr. Alderwood in addition to Dylan's tracking anklet, which violates his parole. Meeting Dr. Alderwood then, she mentions that Dylan beat a guy into a coma and that they found signs of torture on him. When Dr. Alderwood refuses to believe that Dylan would do such a thing, she adds that she had imprisoned him for murder 8 years ago, implying that he definitely has the capability to cause harm again. Nonetheless, he seems to believe in a reformed Dylan and states that he doesn't know his whereabouts. Taking her leave, Shaughnessy later learns about Dylan's younger brother, Professor Sean Forrester, who quit his job to turn his residence into an inn. Hearing about his funeral the next day, Shaughnessy prepares to leave for Guardian Island. Meanwhile, Dylan gets to Guardian Island, a place bought by Sean, and makes his way home. Shown to his room by the inn's receptionist, Joe, he then practices giving his condolences before taking his medicine. Back downstairs a while later, he puts the practice session to use when he meets his mother, Linda. Enraged at the potential danger of him being there, Linda storms out, leaving Dylan to pay his respects to his brother. Just as he notices Sean's dirty nails and a scar by his neck, Sean's wife Susan explains that he fell off a scaffolding. Speaking to Susan later, Linda tells her that she has already been through enough because of Dylan's inability to feel anything. Meanwhile, Dylan declines a drink with Sean's friend Massey, which intrigues Sheriff McCoy. Just then, he gets a call regarding Dylan's parole violation. Having retreated to his room, Dylan contacts Dr. Alderwood, who calmly reminds him to take his lithium pills, as they would allow some feelings to get through which could help mend his ties with his family. Based on Shaughnessy's visit, Dr. Alderwood also tells Dylan to show his family that he is a changed man. While Sheriff McCoy looks into more information about Dylan, Sean's son, Freddie meets his uncle Dylan. A curious Freddie, having heard of Dylan's insane ways from Linda, then learns from Dylan that he simply does not care about people's feelings and isn't capable of fear either. When Dylan states that this does not make him insane, Freddie seems to be convinced. He even shows Dylan the Japanese submarine he was building with Sean, while Sheriff McCoy confirms Dylan's identity and prepares to take him in. Meanwhile, Linda mentions not having heard of Dylan for years before his arrival that day at the island, just as Dylan and Freddie get there. Freddie is immediately sent back upstairs before Linda reminds Dylan that he does not belong there. As Sheriff McCoy cautiously gets back to the inn, Dylan tries to tell his mother about his dedication to therapy and medication which have contributed to his change. Unwilling to believe him, Linda insists that he cannot have changed, just as Sheriff McCoy places him under arrest for attempted murder. Informing him that the FBI is on its way, the sheriff then takes Dylan to the island's bunker and locks him in a cell there. A while later, Joe leaves to get Sheriff McCoy and Dylan some coffee, while the sheriff mentions not knowing Sean even had a brother. He also says that Sean had wanted to talk to him about something. Since he isn't around anymore and Dylan is suddenly back, he implies that Dylan has something to do with Sean's passing. Just then, Dylan's alarm goes off, reminding him about his pills, and he asks for the sheriff's help with reaching his pocket for them. Holding Dylan at gunpoint, the sheriff then gets him the medicine. Joe reaches the bunker just then with the coffee, and while Sheriff McCoy happily accepts a cup, Dylan turns her down. Suddenly hearing an approaching boat and assuming that it is the FBI, the sheriff leaves Joe with Dylan and goes outside to see a bunch of people getting to the island. When he realizes that they aren't FBI but possibly a group of mercenaries, he is promptly shot. Hearing the gunshot alerts Joe as well as everyone at the inn. Repeatedly attacked, Sheriff McCoy returns fire before Cole, the leader of the mercenaries, shoots him to his end. The mercenary crew then spreads out across the island to the bunker and the inn. While they find Linda, Susan, and the other staff of the inn, Joe is found in the bunker's cell by Whymper. Confiscating cell phones, everyone becomes hostages while Joe's presence is reported back to Cole. He instructs Whymper that they need to find out what these people know before taking any action. Not even learning about the FBI being on their way to Guardian Island changes Cole's plan. Meanwhile, Dylan sneakily attacks and knocks out Whymper at the bunker, which leaves Joe thoroughly impressed about their successful plan of ambush. Dylan leaves the bunker then, and she follows him out. Elsewhere on her way to Guardian Island, Shaughnessy wonders why Dylan left a witness alive in his apartment when he hasn't ever done such a thing in all the time that she has tracked him. Back at the island, Cole thinks about where Sean would have hidden what they are looking for, just as Hugh, one of the kitchen staff, makes a run for it and attempts to escape. Instructing his sniper to take him out, Cole gets the job done, even as Dylan gets Joe back in the cover of the trees to hide their presence. Susan, Linda, and Massey are also shaken by Hugh's brutal end, while Blanchard from Cole's crew finds Freddie's room. Hearing about Whymper's state in the bunker from Felix, Cole gets Blanchard to abandon his search of the house and get down. Once he brings Freddy with him, Blanchard is left in charge of the hostages while Cole heads out where Dylan makes gradual progress towards the house. While Joe reaches Hugh's corpse, Dylan manages to sneak into the kitchen and arm himself with a knife. Seeing Joe enter the kitchen, he approaches her to get a reaction out of her, which lures Blanchard to come looking for what caused the trouble. When he comes upon Joe, Dylan knocks him out even as Cole reaches Whymper and Felix at the bunker with Pike. Knowing how dangerous Dylan is, they wonder why he left Whymper alive. Seeing him in pain though, Cole finishes the job and takes him down, much to the surprise of his crew members. He then announces that Whymper's cut will go to whoever eliminates Dylan, who is at the house now, looking for a way to save his family. As the steel shutters of the house are shut, Cole realizes that they left Blanchard there but isn't able to contact him. Meanwhile, Dylan tries to convince Linda that Cole and his crew have not followed him there before calling Dr. Alderwood to speak about the difficulties he is facing. Dr. Alderwood urges him not to give in to his instincts and to instead make a choice that he would be proud of. Disconnecting the call, Dylan then asks a shackled Blanchard what brought them to the island. Not getting an answer out of him frustrates Dylan, and he goes back to where his family is gathered. While Linda and Massey are still wary of his presence, Susan insists that he saved their lives. When Pike gets to one of the windows to peek through, Massey pulls a shotgun on him and Dylan assists him to pull the trigger. Hit in the eye, Pike retreats while Cole instructs his sniper to take Massey out. However, they soon find that they cannot shoot at the house as it is armor-plated. An angry Linda, meanwhile, asks Dylan to leave before he brings any more danger to the family. Meanwhile, Shaughnessy's colleague Wagner fills her in about Sean's high debt despite which he was able to buy Guardian Island, which used to be a naval base during the Second World War. She is also told that the transaction was a mysterious wire transfer. Meanwhile, on his way out, Dylan speaks to Susan and finds out that Sean was restoring the lighthouse on his own when he passed, and also that while Hugh found him, he has been working there for only a little more than a month. Upon her suggestion, Dylan follows the trail behind the inn to the lighthouse, while Cole instructs Felix and Pike to get their machine before finding a way back to the inn. Dylan sees them retrieving their machine with a couple of shovels from their boat while remaining hidden. When they get to the inn, they notice a message left for them informing them about Dylan's departure. Realizing that he must be at the boat, Cole gets the sniper to attack him. Avoiding getting hit though, Dylan manages to get away by boat. Meanwhile, Felix and Pike use their machine to search around the grounds of the inn even as Dylan calls Dr. Alderwood yet again. Inspired by the doctor's suggestion to deal with one issue at a time instead of being overwhelmed, Dylan gets on toward the lighthouse where Cole's sniper is posted. Outside the inn, meanwhile, Cole shouts at Massey to let him know that none of them have any value for him, but offers a deal for anyone who could help him find what he is looking for. Finally realizing that Cole has nothing to do with Dylan, Linda wonders what exactly could Cole be after. Unable to secure transportation to the island that night, meanwhile, Shaughnessy hears about the theft of a luxury yacht from a nearby marina. As it turns out, the boat captain who dropped Dylan off at the island belongs to the same marina. Getting back at the inn, Dylan sees Pike and Felix with their seismic testing machinery, further compelling him to wonder exactly what they are looking for. While Pike tries to force his way into the inn, Dylan quietly takes the external ladder up. Getting to the cellar, Pike finds Blanchard and frees him before getting further through the house. Outside, Cole senses movement just as Dylan manages to get in. Meanwhile, Freddy attacks Blanchard with his toy gun and Pike holds Joe at gunpoint. Dylan finds Blanchard in Freddy's room and gets the child to go downstairs. While he deals with Blanchard, Freddy finds Susan just as Pike gets there with Joe still held at gunpoint. Massey is forced to surrender his weapon for the sake of Joe's life even as Blanchard goes brutal on Dylan. Pretending to reach for a broken piece of mirror, Dylan then fatally stabs an unsuspecting Blanchard with Freddy's Japanese submarine instead. Having eliminated Blanchard, Dylan proceeds downstairs and shoots at Pike's arm, who immediately goes outside to report to Cole. Dylan also steps out soon to speak to Cole, who simply mocks him for his dependence on medication and therapy. He also lets slip that Sean met his end because of what is on the island. However, when Cole realizes that Dylan has no idea about it, he instructs his sniper to take him out only to find him already eliminated. Dylan rushes back in and discusses what Cole told him about Sean. Adding to it the fact that Sean had engine grease under his nails, Dylan figures out that he was working on something and that Hugh was possibly one of Cole's men sent here to keep an eye on things. He then asks about Sean's office and everyone follows him to the cellar to look for clues. Looking around the wine cellar, Dylan finds a hidden door through which he comes upon a secret passage. Massey cautiously follows him through as well. Meanwhile, Shaughnessy learns that it was Cole who stole the yacht. She recognizes him as a high-level fixer and Dylan's previous employer whom he had joined soon after being discharged from the SEALs for almost ending his commanding officer. Not knowing the truth, Shaughnessy concludes that Cole and Dylan are back to working together again on the island. Just as Wagner lets her know that he hasn't been able to secure transport for her to the island, a man approaches Shaughnessy and asks if he could help. Back at the island, Pike and Felix's search operation continues while Massey finally catches up to Dylan. Continuing down the path together, they eventually discover the reason for Sean's end in the form of a Japanese submarine used during the Second World War. Meanwhile, Felix finds evidence of a tunnel leading from the inn to the lighthouse. Leaving him and Pike to find its entrance, Cole heads back towards the inn. While he gets in through the cellar, Massey brings Dylan's attention to having found Yamashita's gold, known to have been stolen and lost during the war. Meanwhile, Cole knocks Joe down and realizes that Linda and Susan are at a hidden door in the wine cellar. Having found their way down the tunnel, Felix and Pike suddenly open fire while Linda attacks Cole to let Susan and Freddie escape. Massey gets hit but follows Dylan onto the submarine. After some quick advice from Dr. Alderwood to do whatever it takes to save himself, Dylan deftly mounts one of the deck guns of the submarine to fight back. While Massey struggles to deal with the gunfire, Dylan eventually takes Pike down, which leaves an explosion to take Felix down as well. Cole gets there just then with Linda and realizes that Dylan found the gold. In an attempt to help Dylan, Massey uses the deck gun to shoot at Cole but meets his end instead. With Linda at Cole's gunpoint now, he offers Dylan a deal to grab the gold and leave the island before the FBI gets there. Refusing to cooperate, Dylan is then made to get Cole the amount of gold that Sean owed him in return for Linda. Packing the ingots up for Cole, Dylan leads the way back to the inn. However, their progress is quite slow as he falters due to the gold's weight and eventually falls. Shaughnessy gets there just then and is promptly shot at by Cole. Dylan is then compelled to pick up the gold again, but he hurls it into the water instead. An enraged Cole lets go of Linda and she manages to hold on to the edge of the platform while Cole tackles Dylan, proving that he is indeed a changed man and not a greedy monster like Cole insinuated earlier. Dylan gives it his all and eventually stabs Cole to his end before pulling Linda back to safety. Finally realizing that Dylan has some good qualities, Linda gives her son a grateful hug. On his way off the island early the next morning, Dylan calls Dr. Alderwood, informing him that he will ensure the safety of his family. Dylan then bids him farewell in favor of being himself for a while and dumps his pills in the ocean. Thanks for sticking until the end. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe, and as always, stay awesome and take care.